Picture this. It's 5:47 a.m. Your alarm screams at you from across the room. You plan to wake up early, hit the gym, drink that green smoothie, and finally start that morning routine you've been promising yourself for months. But instead, you hit snooze. Again and again. By 7:30, you're rushing out the door with yesterday's coffee stains on your shirt, grabbing a processed breakfast bar, promising yourself that tomorrow will be different. Sound familiar? Here's the shocking truth. The average person makes about 35,000 decisions every single day. 35,000. And here's what will blow your mind. 45% of everything you do isn't actually a decision at all. It's a habit. Nearly half of your entire existence is running on autopilot. Think about that for a moment. Almost half of who you are, what you achieve, where you end up in life. It all comes down to the unconscious patterns you've built into your daily routine. But what if I told you there's a woman who cracked the code? A woman who discovered why some people effortlessly wake up at 5 a.m. while others can barely drag themselves out of bed at noon. Why some people automatically reach for an apple when stressed, while others demolish a bag of chips. Why some people seem to have supernatural willpower, while others feel like they're fighting a losing battle against themselves every single day. Her name is Gretchen Rubin, and she spent years obsessing over one life-changing question. How do we change? Not just how do we want to change, or how we try to change, but how do we actually change? Permanently, sustainably, without relying on motivation or willpower or some magical burst of inspiration that never seems to last. And what she discovered will completely revolutionize how you think about habits, willpower, and human behavior. She found that there are 4 distinct personality types when it comes to building habits. And once you know which one you are, habit formation becomes as predictable as flipping a light switch. She discovered why New Year's resolutions fail 92% of the time, and more importantly, what the successful 8% do differently. She uncovered the secret of habit stacking that allows you to build multiple positive behaviors simultaneously without overwhelming yourself. But here's where it gets really interesting. Gretchen realized that everything we've been taught about habits is backwards. We've been told it takes 21 days to form a habit. That's complete nonsense. We've been told that motivation leads to action. Also wrong. We've been told that willpower is like a muscle that gets stronger with exercise. Totally false. The truth is far more fascinating, far more hopeful, and far more actionable than anything you've heard before. In the next 30 minutes, I'm going to take you on a journey through the real science of habit formation. You're going to discover your unique habit personality type, learn the 4 pillars of lasting change, and walk away with a complete system for transforming any area of your life. Your health, your relationships, your career, your finances, everything. But I need you to do something right now. I need you to make a commitment to yourself. Promise me you'll stay until the very end, because the most powerful insights come in the final minutes. Hit that subscribe button if you're ready to finally crack the code on lasting change. And let's dive into Better Than Before, the book that's going to change how you think about change forever. Are you ready? Let's begin. Before we dive into the life-changing insights of Better Than Before, you need to understand the fascinating woman behind these discoveries. Gretchen Rubin isn't your typical self-help guru. She's not a motivational speaker who discovered success after hitting rock bottom. Her story is actually far more relatable and, in many ways, more remarkable. Gretchen started as a lawyer, a successful one, working at the Supreme Court, no less. She had what most people would consider the perfect life. Prestigious career, financial security, all the external markers of success. But something was missing. She felt like she was living someone else's life, following someone else's script. Then came the moment that changed everything. One rainy April afternoon in 2000, she was riding a city bus when she had what she calls her thunderbolt moment. She realized that if she wanted to be happier, she needed to think about happiness more systematically. This wasn't just a fleeting thought. It was a complete revelation that would redirect her entire life. She left law and began what became a decade-long quest to understand human nature and behavior change. But here's what makes Gretchen different. She didn't just study happiness and habits from an academic perspective. She became the ultimate guinea pig, experimenting on herself and her family with ruthless curiosity. Over the next several years, she conducted what she calls her happiness project, a year-long experiment where she tested different strategies for increasing happiness and life satisfaction. She documented everything, measured everything, and most importantly, she paid attention to what actually worked versus what she thought should work. This led to her first bestseller, The Happiness Project, which spent 2 years on the New York Times bestseller list. But Gretchen wasn't satisfied. The more she studied happiness, the more she realized that lasting happiness was impossible without mastering habits. After all, how can you be consistently happy if you can't consistently do the things that make you happy? So she dove deeper. She began studying behavioral psychology, neuroscience, and ancient philosophy. She interviewed thousands of people about their habit successes and failures. She analyzed data from habit tracking apps. She studied everything from monastery routines to corporate wellness programs. But most importantly, she made a crucial discovery that sets her apart from other habit researchers. She realized that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to habit formation. The strategies that work brilliantly for one person can be completely useless or even counterproductive for another person. This insight led to her groundbreaking For Tendencies framework, which we'll explore in detail shortly. It's a system that explains why identical habit advice can work like magic for your friend, but fail miserably for you, and vice versa. What makes Gretchen's work so powerful is her combination of rigorous research with practical experimentation. She doesn't just cite studies. She lives the principles, tests them with real people, and refines them based on what actually works in the messy reality of daily life. Today, she's one of the most influential happiness and habit researchers in the world, with over 300 million downloads of her podcasts, multiple New York Times bestsellers, and a devoted following of people who transform their lives using her insights. But perhaps most importantly, Gretchen understands that lasting change isn't about perfection. It's about understanding yourself well enough to design systems that work with your nature, not against it. Now, let's dive into those systems. The 4 tendencies. Here's where everything changes, and I mean everything. Gretchen's most revolutionary discovery wasn't about habits themselves. It was about the 4 distinct personality types that determine how we form habits. She calls this the 4 tendencies. And once you understand which tendency you are, habit formation becomes infinitely easier. Think about this question. How do you respond to expectations? Not just any expectations, but 2 specific types. Outer expectations, what others expect of you, and inner expectations, what you expect of yourself. Your answer to this question will reveal why you succeeded with some habits and failed with others, why certain motivation techniques work for your friends but not for you, and most importantly, how to design habit systems that actually stick. The upholder, the self-starter. Let's start with the upholders. These are the people you probably love and hate at the same time. Upholders readily meet both outer expectations and inner expectations. They're the ones who set a goal to run every morning and actually do it. They promise to meet you at 6 a.m. for a workout and show up. They commit to eating healthy and somehow resist the office donuts without breaking a sweat. Gretchen shares the story of her friend Sarah, a classic upholder. Sarah decided she wanted to learn French. So she signed up for classes, bought the books, downloaded the apps, and created a study schedule. 6 months later, she was having conversations in French. When asked how she stayed motivated, Sarah looked confused and said, "I don't understand the question. I said I was going to learn French, so I learned French." Here's the thing about upholders. They represent only about 19% of the population, but they're disproportionately represented in success stories and self-help testimonials. This creates a dangerous illusion that everyone should be able to form habits the way upholders do. If you're an upholder, your habit superpower is that you can rely on internal motivation. You don't need external accountability, complicated reward systems, or social pressure. You just need clear expectations and the freedom to meet them your way. But upholders have a shadow side too. They can become rigid, inflexible when circumstances change, and sometimes they prioritize meeting expectations over common sense. They might continue their morning run during a thunderstorm because that's what I committed to. The questioner, the skeptical optimizer. Next, we have the questioners, about 24% of the population. Questioners meet inner expectations, but they resist outer expectations unless they make sense. They need to understand the why behind everything. Meet David, a software engineer and classic questioner. His doctor told him to take a daily vitamin supplement. Instead of just following orders, David spent 3 weeks researching vitamin absorption, bioavailability, timing, and interactions. He read dozens of studies, consulted multiple sources, and finally designed a personalized supplement routine that was far more sophisticated than what his doctor originally recommended. Questioners are the researchers, the optimizers, the people who turn simple habits into personalized systems. They don't just want to exercise. They want to understand which type of exercise is most efficient for their goals, what time of day maximizes results, and how to track progress scientifically. Their habit superpower is customization. Once a questioner understands why a habit makes sense to them specifically, they often become incredibly consistent because the habit aligns with their personal logic. But here's their challenge: analysis paralysis. Questioners can get so caught up in researching the perfect habit system that they never actually start. They might spend months comparing meditation apps instead of actually meditating. If you're a questioner, your habit success depends on doing your research first. Don't fight this tendency. Embrace it. Spend time understanding the science behind the habit. Customize it to your specific situation. And remember that good enough is better than perfect research with no action. The obliger, the people pleaser. Now we come to the largest group. The obligers, representing about 41% of the population. Obligers readily meet outer expectations, but struggle to meet inner expectations. They're the people who never miss a work deadline, but can't stick to their personal workout routine. They'll help everyone else achieve their goals while their own dreams gather dust. Let me tell you about Maria, a marketing executive and classic obliger. For years, she tried to establish a morning exercise routine. She bought the gear, set the alarm, made the plans. But every morning, she'd hit snooze and promise to start tomorrow. She felt lazy, undisciplined, broken. Then Maria tried something different. She scheduled morning workouts with her neighbor. Suddenly, the same woman who couldn't get herself to the gym was jumping out of bed at 5:45 a.m., rain or shine. Why? Because now someone else was counting on her. The revelation hit her like lightning. She wasn't lazy or undisciplined. She was an obliger who needed external accountability to meet internal goals. If you're an obliger, and statistically, you probably are, you need to stop beating yourself up for needing external accountability. It's not a weakness. It's just how you're wired. The key is to create external accountability for your internal goals. Join a workout class instead of exercising alone. Tell your friends about your reading goal. Find an accountability partner for your side business. Use apps that donate to charities you hate if you miss your habits. The external pressure that feels restricted to other tendencies is actually your secret weapon. But obligers face a unique challenge: obliger rebellion. When external expectations become too overwhelming, with no time or energy left for inner expectations, obligers can suddenly and dramatically rebel, quitting jobs, ending relationships, or completely abandoning responsibilities. The rebel, the freedom fighter. Finally, we have the rebels, the smallest group at about 17% of the population. Rebels resist both outer and inner expectations. They want to do what they want to do when they want to do it, in their own way. Think about Jake, a creative director and classic rebel. His wife bought him a fitness tracker for his birthday, hoping it would motivate him to walk more. Jake wore it for exactly 2 days before shoving it in a drawer. The moment that thing started telling me how many steps to take, he said, "I wanted to sit on the couch out of spite." But here's what's fascinating about rebels. When they want something badly enough, they can be incredibly consistent and disciplined. Jake might reject a structured workout program, but he'll surf for hours in freezing water because he loves it. He might ignore meal plans, but he'll cook elaborate meals when the mood strikes him. Rebels succeed with habits when they can frame them as expressions of identity and freedom rather than rules to follow. Instead of, "I have to exercise," a rebel might think, "I'm the kind of person who stays strong and capable." Instead of, "I should eat healthy," they might think, "I choose to fuel my body well because I respect myself." The key for rebels is choice, identity, and consequence. They need to want the habit for their own reasons. see it as part of who they are, and understand the real-world consequences of their choices. Now, here's the crucial insight that changes everything. Most habit advice is written by upholders for upholders. That's why generic habit advice fails for 80% of people. You've been trying to use strategies designed for a different personality type entirely. Once you identify your tendency, you can finally stop fighting your nature and start working with it. The upholder's discipline, the questioner's research, the obliger's accountability, and the rebel's freedom, these aren't flaws to overcome. They're strengths to leverage. But knowing your tendency is just a beginning. Now let's explore the deeper architecture of lasting habits. The strategy of monitoring. Here's a question that's going to reveal something profound about how your mind works. Are you a numbers person or feelings person? Do you thrive on detailed data and specific metrics? Or do you prefer to go by intuition and general impressions? Your answer determines whether one of the most powerful habit strategies will accelerate your progress or completely sabotage it. Gretchen calls this the strategy of monitoring. And understanding your monitoring style can be the difference between sustainable success and frustrated failure. Monitoring, the data-driven approach. Let me tell you about Jennifer, a software product manager who transformed her health using what Gretchen calls monitoring. Jennifer was struggling with inconsistent eating habits and low energy. She tried various diets and exercise programs, but nothing stuck. Then she started tracking everything. And I mean everything. She used a food tracking app to log every meal, a sleep tracker to monitor her rest quality, a mood app to rate her daily energy levels, and a fitness tracker to count steps and workouts. She created spreadsheets connecting her food choices to her energy levels, her sleep quality to her workout performance. Within 3 months, Jennifer had identified patterns that were invisible to her before. She discovered that her afternoon energy crashes weren't random. They happened every time she ate carb-heavy lunches. She realized her worst sleep came after late evening phone calls with her stressful family members. She found that her most productive work days followed mornings when she got at least 7,000 steps before 10 a.m. This data didn't just inform her choices. It motivated her. Every log meal, every tracked workout, every recorded mood became part of a fascinating experiment with herself as a subject. The act of monitoring itself became a habit that reinforced all her other positive habits. For people who thrive on monitoring, data provides clarity, motivation, and course correction. They love seeing trends, identifying patterns, and optimizing systems. The simple act of measurement often changes behavior automatically. What gets measured gets managed. But monitoring isn't just about fancy apps and gadgets. It can be as simple as putting a check mark on a calendar, keeping a one-sentence daily journal, or taking a weekly photo. The key is consistent, objective tracking that reveals patterns over time. The dark side of monitoring. But here's where it gets tricky. For some people, monitoring has the exact opposite effect. Instead of motivation, they feel judgment. Instead of clarity, they feel overwhelming complexity. Instead of success, they feel like they're failing at one more thing. Meet Sarah, a creative writer and the complete opposite of Jennifer. Sarah tried using a habit tracking app to build a daily writing routine. She downloaded the most popular app, set up tracking for writing time, word count, and quality rating. At first, she was excited, but within a week, the app became a source of stress. On days when she wrote less, she felt guilty. When she forgot to log her writing, she felt like she was cheating. When she saw her inconsistent pattern visualized in charts and graphs, she felt like a failure. The monitoring system that was supposed to help her write more actually made her want to write less. She found herself avoiding writing because she didn't want to face the data that showed her inconsistency. This is a paradox of monitoring. For some people, tracking increases motivation and consistency. For others, it increases pressure and decreases intrinsic enjoyment. The key is understanding which type you are, discovering your monitoring style. Here's how to figure out your monitoring style. Think about these questions. When you step on a scale, do you feel motivated by the data or stressed by it? When you see your bank account balance, does it inspire you to budget better or make you want to ignore money altogether? When someone tracks your performance at work, Do you rise to the challenge or feel micromanaged? If you're energized by data, embrace monitoring. Use apps, keep journals, track metrics, measure progress. Let the data tell you stories about yourself and guide your decisions. Your monitoring system becomes part of the habit itself. If you're stressed by data, skip the detailed tracking. Trust your intuition. Focus on how habits make you feel and use very simple, qualitative measures. Instead of, I exercised for 47 minutes and burned 312 calories, just know, great workout, felt strong. But here's a crucial nuance that Gretchen discovered. Sometimes we need to monitor, even if we don't enjoy it. If you're trying to change a habit that involves safety, health, or money, some level of monitoring might be necessary regardless of your preference. The strategy of foundation. Now, let's talk about something that most habit books get completely wrong. They assume you can just add new habits to your existing life. But Gretchen discovered something profound. Sometimes the reason your habits won't stick isn't because your system is wrong. It's because your foundation is crumbling. Think about this. If you're chronically sleep-deprived, even the best exercise routine will feel impossible. If you're constantly stressed about money, meditation becomes another item on an overwhelming to-do list. If your environment is chaotic and disorganized, no productivity system will save you. Gretchen calls this the strategy of foundation. The idea that some habits are foundational and must be addressed first before other habits can succeed. These foundation habits usually involve sleep, food, movement, and environment organization. Let me tell you about Marcus, an entrepreneur who spent years trying to build a morning routine. He wanted to wake up early, exercise, journal, and work on his side business. He tried every technique, multiple alarms, morning accountability partners, sleep apps, you name it. Nothing worked until he addressed his foundation. He realized he was staying up until 2 a.m. binge-watching Netflix, eating dinner at 10 p.m., and keeping his phone next to his bed. His evening habits were sabotaging his morning habits. So Marcus flipped his approach. Instead of trying to fix his morning, he fixed his evening. He established a digital sunset at 9 p.m., moved dinner to 7 p.m., and created a wind-down routine. Suddenly, his morning routine became effortless because his foundation was solid. This is why New Year's resolutions fail so spectacularly. People try to add meditation, exercise, and healthy eating all at once, while keeping the same sleep schedule, stress levels, and environmental chaos that made those habits difficult in the first place. The foundation strategy teaches us to be strategic about habit order. Start with the habits that make other habits easier. Consistent sleep, regular movement, organized environment, and manageable stress. Once your foundation is solid, other habits naturally become more achievable. This isn't the sexy advice that sells books, but it's the realistic approach that actually works. Fix your foundation first, then build the life you want on top of it. The strategies of scheduling and accountability. Now we're getting to the part where theory meets reality, where good intentions transform into actual results. Two of the most powerful habit strategies that Gretchen discovered are scheduling and accountability, but not in the way you might think. The strategy of scheduling, making time real. Let me tell you about the most important habit insight you'll ever hear. The habit of the future has no power over the habit of the present. That sentence, from philosopher William James, explains why good intentions fail and why scheduling succeeds. Meet Christina, a working mother who desperately wanted to start exercising. For months, she told herself she'd work out when she had time. She bought workout clothes, researched fitness programs, even got a gym membership. But somehow, she never had time. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. Every morning, she'd promise herself she'd exercise that day. Every evening, she'd feel guilty about not exercising and promise to do better tomorrow. She felt trapped in a cycle of good intentions and constant disappointment. Then Christina learned about the strategy of scheduling, and everything changed. Instead of exercising when she had time, she scheduled specific workouts at specific times. Tuesday, 6 a.m., 20-minute YouTube workout. Thursday, 7 p.m., walk around the neighborhood. Saturday, 10 a.m., gym session. The magic wasn't just in having a schedule. It was in treating those scheduled times as seriously as she'd treat a doctor's appointment or important meeting. When her friend called to chat during her Tuesday morning workout slot, Christina said, "I'm not available then, but I can talk at 7. When work ran late on Thursday evening, she still went for her walk, even if it was just 15 minutes instead of 30. Within 6 weeks, Christina had exercised more consistently than she had in the previous 2 years. The secret wasn't finding more time. It was making the time she had more real through scheduling. Here's why scheduling works so powerfully. It transforms a vague intention into a concrete commitment. I should exercise more is a wish. I will do a 20-minute workout in my living room every Tuesday at 6 a.m. is a plan. But scheduling reveals an important truth about personality types. Some people thrive on detailed schedules. They love knowing exactly what they're doing when. Others feel suffocated by rigid schedules and prefer flexibility. The key is finding your scheduling sweet spot. If you love structure, create detailed schedules with specific times, locations, and activities. Use calendar blocks. Set reminders, and treat your habit appointments as seriously as work meetings. If you prefer flexibility, use what Gretchen calls scheduling principles instead of specific times. For example, I exercise 3 times per week, with at least 1 day between sessions, or I read for 30 minutes every day, sometime between dinner and bedtime. The goal isn't to become a scheduling robot. It's to make your desired habits more likely to happen by giving them real estate in your actual life. The strategy of accountability, making it social. Now, let's talk about one of the most underestimated forces in habit formation: other people. Human beings are social creatures, and we can use this to our advantage in powerful ways. But accountability isn't just about finding someone to nag you. Gretchen identified several distinct types of accountability, and understanding which type motivates you can dramatically increase your success rate. Individual accountability. Some people are motivated by accountability to themselves. They keep habit journals, use tracking apps, or create personal reward systems. They thrive on self-monitoring and internal commitment. Take David, a software developer who wanted to read more. He created what he called his reading accountability system. Every book he finished, he wrote a 1-page summary and emailed it to himself. He kept a running list of books read and books recommended by others. He set up automatic Goodreads updates to his social media. David never told anyone about his reading goal, never joined a book club, never needed external pressure. But he created multiple layers of self-accountability that made his reading habit feel important and visible to the person who mattered most, himself. Partner accountability. Other people need accountability to specific individuals. This could be a workout partner, a habit buddy, or even a coach or trainer. Sarah and her neighbor Michelle created what they called a movement partnership. They committed some form of exercise 6 days a week, but they didn't have to exercise together. Every evening, they texted each other what they did that day. If one of them missed a day, the other would send a gentle check-in text. The beauty of their system was its simplicity and flexibility. Sarah might do yoga while Michelle went for a run. Sarah might exercise at 6 a.m. while Michelle worked out at 8 p.m. But they both knew someone cared about their progress. Someone was paying attention. Someone was in it with them. Their partnership lasted 3 years and became one of the most consistent positive habits either of them had ever maintained. Group accountability. Some people thrive on group accountability. The energy, competition, and social proof that comes from being part of a community working towards similar goals. Meet Tom, who joined a local running group not because he loved running, he actually hated it, but because he wanted to get in shape and meet people. The group met every Saturday morning for a group run, followed by coffee. Within the group, Tom found something he'd never experienced before: positive peer pressure. When he didn't show up, people noticed and asked if he was okay. When he did show up, people celebrated his progress. When he wanted to quit, other members shared their own struggles and encouraged him to keep going. The group accountability gave Tom something individual motivation couldn't: a sense of belonging, shared struggle, and collective achievement. He wasn't just running for himself. He was part of something larger: public accountability. Finally, some people are motivated by public accountability, making their commitments visible to a broader audience through social media, blogs, or other public platforms. Lisa, an aspiring writer, committed to writing 1,000 words every day for a year. But instead of keeping this goal private, she created a simple blog where she posted her daily word count and a brief reflection on her writing process. The public nature of her commitment created a powerful motivation. When she felt like skipping a day, she imagined having to post 0 words today and explain why. When she had a great writing day, she looked forward to sharing her success. The public accountability not only helped her maintain her writing habit, it also connected her with other writers who followed her journey, creating a community around her commitment. Finding your accountability style. The key insight here is that accountability isn't one size fits all. Some people are motivated by private self-tracking, others by intimate partnerships, others by group energy, and still others by public commitment. Think about your past successes. Did you achieve them through self-discipline, with the help of specific people, as part of group effort, or by making public commitments? Don't fight your natural accountability style. Lean into it. If you're an introvert who values privacy, don't force yourself to join groups or make public commitments. Create personal accountability systems that honor your need for internal motivation. If you're an extrovert who thrives on social energy, don't try to go it alone. Find partners, join groups, make public commitments that harness your social nature. The goal isn't to become someone you're not. It's to design accountability systems that work with who you already are. But accountability and scheduling are just the beginning. The real magic happens when we understand the deeper psychology of why habits stick or fail, the strategies of inconvenience, and safeguards. Here's where Gretchen's insights get really clever, and I mean truly brilliant. She discovered that sometimes the best way to build a good habit isn't to make it easier, it's to make the competing bad habit harder. And sometimes the best way to maintain a good habit isn't to rely on motivation, it's a plan for the inevitable moment when motivation disappears. The strategy of inconvenience. Using friction to your advantage. Let me tell you about Paul, a graphic designer who was struggling with late-night phone scrolling. Every night, he'd get into bed intending to read for 30 minutes before sleep. Instead, he'd grab his phone just to check messages quickly, and 3 hours later he'd still be scrolling through social media, his book untouched, his sleep schedule destroyed. Paul tried everything. He set phone timers, used apps that block social media, even tried leave his phone in another room. Nothing worked. The pull was too strong, the habit too ingrained. Then Paul learned about the strategy of inconvenience, and he made one simple change. He bought a cheap alarm clock and started charging his phone in the kitchen overnight. That's it. His phone was still accessible. He could walk to the kitchen and get it any time. But those 30 seconds of inconvenience, that small barrier between impulse and action, was enough to break the automatic pattern. The first night, Paul reached for his phone 3 times before remembering it wasn't there. Each time, instead of getting up, he picked up his book. Within 2 weeks, reaching for a book before bed became his new automatic response. This is the genius of the inconvenience strategy. You don't need superhuman willpower to resist temptation. You just need to add enough friction to break the unconscious autopilot that drives most bad habits. The key insight is that most bad habits happen not because we consciously choose them, but because they're the path of least resistance in the moment. When we're tired, stressed, or distracted, we automatically default to whatever is easiest. Want to eat healthier? Don't keep junk food in your house. Make yourself drive to the store if you really want it. Want to exercise more? Sleep in your workout clothes. Keep your sneakers by the bed. Want to reduce online shopping? Remove your credit card information from shopping websites. Make yourself enter it manually every time. But here's where it gets interesting. You can also use inconvenience in reverse. Make good habits more convenient, while making bad habits less convenient. Meet Jennifer, who wanted to drink more water throughout the day. Instead of relying on remembering to drink water, she bought a large water bottle and kept it on her desk where she couldn't miss it. But she also moved all the sodas and coffee to a cabinet across the room. The result? Drinking water became the path of least resistance, while drinking less healthy options required a conscious decision and physical effort. Within a month, her water intake had tripled, and her soda consumption had dropped to near zero. Not through willpower, but through intelligent design. The inconvenience strategy works because it aligns your environment with your values. making your future self more likely to make choices your current self would approve of. The strategy of safeguards, planning for failure. Now, let's talk about something that might sound negative, but is actually incredibly liberating. Planning for failure. Most habit advice assumes you'll be motivated, energetic, and focused all the time. But real life doesn't work that way. Real life includes sick days, family emergencies, work deadlines, travel, stress, and simple human exhaustion. The difference between habits that last and habits that fail isn't perfect consistency. It's the ability to get back on track quickly after inevitable disruptions. Meet Rachel, a working mother who built an impressive morning routine. 5:30 a.m. wake up, 20 minutes of meditation, 30 minutes of exercise, healthy breakfast, and journaling before her kids woke up. For 3 months, she was incredibly consistent and felt amazing. Then her son got sick. Then she had a work crisis. Then her mother visited for a week. Within a month, her perfect morning routine had completely disappeared, and she felt like a failure. But then Rachel learned about safeguards and completely changed her approach. Instead of having one rigid morning routine, she created 3 versions. Ideal routine, 90 minutes including meditation, exercise, breakfast, and journaling. Minimum viable routine, 20 minutes including just meditation and a healthy breakfast. Emergency routine, 5 minutes of deep breathing and drinking a glass of water. The game changer was permission to use the shorter versions without guilt. When life got crazy, instead of abandoning her morning routine entirely, Rachel would do the minimum viable version or even just the emergency version. This approach kept her connected to her morning habit even during difficult periods. When things calmed down, she could easily return to her ideal routine because she'd never completely stopped the habit pattern. The safeguards prevented temporary disruptions from becoming permanent derailments. Types of safeguards. Gretchen identified several types of safeguards that can protect your habits from life's inevitable disruptions. Time safeguards. What's the minimum version of your habit? If you usually exercise for 45 minutes, what's the 10-minute version? If you typically read for 30 minutes, what's the 5-minute version? Location safeguards. What if you can't do your habit in your usual place? If you usually work out at the gym, what's your home workout? If you usually write at your desk, where else could you write? Energy safeguards. What if you're tired, stressed, or emotionally drained? If you usually cook elaborate healthy meals, what's your simple healthy meal? If you usually do intense workouts, what's your gentle movement option? The psychology behind safeguards is profound. They remove the all-or-nothing thinking that destroys habits. Instead of, I missed my workout, so I'm off track, you think, I did the 10-minute version, so I'm still consistent. This isn't about lowering standards or accepting mediocrity. It's about understanding that consistency matters more than intensity, and that small actions repeated over time create bigger changes than perfect actions done occasionally. The strategy of loopholes, identifying self-sabotage. Now we need to talk about something uncomfortable but essential, the lies we tell ourselves to justify abandoning our good habits. Gretchen calls these loopholes, and recognizing them is crucial for long-term success. We all have sophisticated internal lawyers who argue for why we should skip our habits. These arguments sound reasonable, even noble, but they're actually sophisticated forms of self-sabotage. Let me share some of the most common loopholes that Gretchen identified. The false choice loophole. I can't exercise today because I need to spend time with my family. As if these are mutually exclusive. You could exercise with your family or exercise for 20 minutes instead of scrolling social media for 20 minutes. The moral license loophole. I ate salad for lunch, so I deserve this ice cream for dinner. One healthy choice doesn't cancel out one unhealthy choice. The tomorrow loophole. I'll start my diet on Monday. Monday is a date, not a magical motivation amplifier. The lack of control loophole. I can't eat healthy because my family only buys junk food. You might have less control than you'd like, but you're not completely powerless. The goal isn't to eliminate these thoughts. They're part of being human. The goal is to recognize them as loopholes rather than legitimate reasons. When you hear your internal lawyer making arguments against your habits, you can smile and say, I see what you're doing there, and then choose your response consciously rather than automatically. Sometimes you'll decide the loophole is actually valid. Maybe you really are too sick to exercise, or you really do need to skip your routine for a genuine emergency. But most of the time, recognizing a loophole is enough to see through it and stick with your habit. The combination of inconvenience, safeguard, and loophole awareness creates what Gretchen calls a habit-protective environment. A setup where good habits are easier, bad habits are harder. Disruptions are planned for, and self-sabotage is recognized and neutralized. This isn't about willpower or motivation. This is about intelligent design that works with human psychology rather than against it. And when you combine these strategies with everything else we've learned, your tendency type, your monitoring style, your accountability preferences, you create a personalized system that's almost impossible to fail. But there's one more crucial element we need to discuss, and it might be the most important insight of all: the strategy of identity and rewards. We're approaching the deepest level of habit formation now, the place where temporary behavior change transforms into permanent identity shift. This is where Gretchen's insights become truly life-changing. The strategy of identity, becoming versus doing. Here's a question that will revolutionize how you think about habits. Are you someone who is trying to exercise, or are you someone who exercises? Are you someone who wants to be healthy, or are you a healthy person? The difference in language might seem small, but the psychological impact is enormous. Let me tell you about Maria, a 45-year-old accountant who had tried to quit smoking dozens of times. She'd used patches, gum, apps, hypnosis, group therapy, everything. Each time, she'd last a few weeks or even a few months before returning to cigarettes during a stressful period. The breakthrough came when Maria's 7-year-old daughter asked her why she smoked. Without thinking, Maria answered, "Mommy doesn't smoke anymore. Honey." In that moment, something clicked. She realized she'd been thinking of herself as a smoker trying to quit instead of a non-smoker. From that day forward, Maria's internal dialogue changed completely. When offered a cigarette, instead of thinking, "I'm trying to quit," she thought, "I don't smoke." When stressed, instead of thinking, "I can't have a cigarette," she thought, "I don't want a cigarette because I'm not a smoker." This wasn't just positive thinking or affirmations. This was a fundamental shift in self-concept. Maria wasn't trying to do something different. She was being someone different. And people consistently act in alignment with their identity. The identity strategy works because it aligns our actions with our self-concept. When there's a conflict between who we think we are and what we're doing, psychological pressure builds until something changes. Usually, our actions change to match our identity. But here's the beautiful paradox. While identity drives behavior, behavior also shapes identity. Every time you exercise, you become slightly more of an exerciser. Every time you choose a healthy meal, you become slightly more of a healthy person. Every time you write, you become slightly more of a writer. This means you can consciously craft your identity through small, consistent actions. You don't need to wait until you feel like a healthy person to start eating vegetables. You eat vegetables, and gradually, your identity shifts to match your actions. Think about the habit you're trying to build. What type of person does this habit naturally? What would this person think, say, and do in various situations? How can you start thinking and acting like this person right now, even before you fully believe it? The strategy of rewards, understanding what actually motivates. Now let's tackle one of the most misunderstood aspects of habit formation, rewards. Most people think rewards are about external treats, chocolate after a workout, shopping after finishing a project, vacation after reaching a goal. But Gretchen discovered that the most powerful rewards are often intrinsic and immediate. The problem with external rewards is that they can actually undermine intrinsic motivation over time. If you only exercise to earn chocolate, what happens when you don't want chocolate? If you only save money to buy things, what happens when you already have everything you want? Meet David, a software developer who wanted to build a daily reading habit. He started with a reward system. After reading for 30 minutes, he could watch TV for 30 minutes. It worked for a few weeks, but then he realized something strange. He was rushing through his reading to get to the TV reward. The reading became a chore to endure rather than an activity to enjoy. So David flipped his approach. Instead of external rewards, he focused on intrinsic rewards. The satisfaction of learning something new, the pleasure of a well-written sentence, the excitement of following a compelling story, the pride of expanding his knowledge. He started choosing books that genuinely interested him rather than books he thought he should read. He created a comfortable reading environment with good lighting and a cozy chair. He began keeping a journal of interesting insights and quotes from his reading. The result? Reading became intrinsically rewarding. David looked forward to his reading time rather than viewing it as something to get through. The habit became self-sustaining because the activity itself was the reward. This reveals a crucial truth. The best habits are those that become intrinsically satisfying. Exercise that makes you feel strong and energized. Healthy eating that makes you feel light and clear. Creative work that gives you a sense of flow and accomplishment. But here's the challenge. Intrinsic rewards often come after you've built some competency in the habit. The first few workouts might feel difficult and uncomfortable. The first few healthy meals might not taste as good as processed food. The first few days of waking up early might feel exhausting. This is where strategic external rewards can be helpful in the beginning. Use them as training wheels while your intrinsic motivation develops. But always keep the bigger picture in mind. You're not trying to create dependency on external rewards. You're buying time for intrinsic rewards to emerge. The 4 types of rewards. Gretchen identified 4 types of rewards that can support habit formation. 1. Intrinsic rewards, the natural satisfaction that comes from the activity itself. The runner's high, the satisfaction of a clean home, the pleasure of learning something new. 2. Extrinsic rewards, external treats or privileges you give yourself for completing habits. These work best when they're small, immediate, and aligned with your values. 3. Social rewards, recognition, praise, or connection that comes from sharing your habits with others. The encouragement from workout partners, the pride of family members, the respect of peers. 4. Progress rewards, the satisfaction that comes from seeing improvement over time. Tracking metrics, celebrating milestones, reflecting on how far you've come. The most sustainable habits incorporate multiple types of rewards. You might enjoy the intrinsic satisfaction of exercise, while also celebrating progress milestones and sharing achievements with friends. But remember, different personality types are motivated by different types of rewards. Upholders might be satisfied by intrinsic and progress rewards. Obligers might need social rewards. Questioners might be motivated by the intellectual satisfaction of optimization. Rebels might need to feel that the habit expresses their identity and values. Bringing it all together, the habit architecture. Now we can see the complete picture of what Gretchen discovered. Lasting habit change isn't about willpower, motivation, or discipline. It's about creating what she calls habit architecture, a personalized system that includes understanding your tendency and designing strategies that work with your personality, choosing monitoring approaches that motivate rather than stress you, building foundation habits that make other habits easier, using scheduling and accountability in ways that align with your preferences, applying convenience and inconvenience strategically to support good habits, creating safeguards that protect habits during difficult periods, recognizing and neutralizing the loopholes that justify abandonment, shifting identity to align with desired behaviors, leveraging rewards that sustain long-term motivation. When you align all these elements with your unique personality and circumstances, habit formation becomes almost inevitable. You're not fighting against your nature. You're designing systems that make success the path of least resistance. This is why generic habit advice fails for most people. It ignores the complexity and individuality of human psychology. But when you understand and apply Gretchen's insights, you join the small percentage of people who create lasting change not through superhuman effort, but through intelligent design. But there's one final insight that ties everything together, and it's the most important one of all. As we reach the end of this journey through Better Than Before, I want you to take a moment and think about something. Think about the person you were 30 minutes ago, before you started listening to this. Think about all the habits you've tried to build and failed. Think about all the promises you've made to yourself that you couldn't keep. Think about all the times you felt like you lacked willpower, discipline, or motivation. Now I want you to understand something profound. You weren't broken. You weren't lazy. You weren't weak. You were just using the wrong strategies for your unique personality and circumstances. Everything changes now. You now understand that there are 4 distinct personality types when it comes to habits, and 80% of habit advice is designed for only one type. You now know that monitoring can either accelerate or sabotage your progress, depending on your psychological makeup. You now see that the path to lasting change isn't through force or willpower. It's through intelligent design that works with human nature rather than against it. The transformation that awaits you. Imagine your life 6 months from now. You wake up naturally at the time you want to wake up, not because you force yourself, but because you create an evening routine that makes early rising effortless. You move your body regularly, not because you have to, but because you found forms of movement that you genuinely enjoy and schedule them in ways that fit your lifestyle. You eat in a way that nourishes your body, not because you're following someone else's diet, but because you've designed an eating system that satisfies your personal preferences while supporting your health goals. You consistently work on the creative projects that matter to you, not because you found more hours in the day, but because you've learned to protect and prioritize the time you have. You handle stress better because you've built resilience habits that activate automatically during difficult periods. You feel more connected to the people you care about because you created relationship habits that keep love and friendship growing rather than fading. You sleep better, think clearer, and feel more like the person you've always wanted to become. This isn't fantasy. This is what happens when you stop fighting your nature and start designing systems that work for who you actually are, not who you think you should be. The choice before you. Right now, you're at a crossroads. You can close this video and go back to the same habit struggles you've always had, trying the same generic advice that's never worked for your unique personality. You can continue the cycle of starting and stopping, promising and failing, hoping and disappointing yourself, or you can choose a different path. You can take the insights you've learned today and immediately put them into practice. You can identify your tendency type and start using strategies designed for your personality. You can examine your current habits through the lens of monitoring, scheduling, accountability, and identity. You can begin designing your personal habit architecture right now. Your first steps. Here's what I want you to do in the next 24 hours. First, identify your tendency. Are you an upholder who can rely on internal expectations? A questioner who needs to understand the why? An obliger who needs external accountability? Or a rebel who needs freedom and choice? Once you know this, you can stop using strategies designed for other types. Second, choose one habit you want to build or change. Not 5 habits, not a complete life overhaul, just one. Apply what you've learned about your personality type to design a system for this single habit. Third, create safeguards. What's the minimum viable version of this habit? What will you do when life gets complicated? How will you recognize and respond to the loopholes your mind will inevitably create? Fourth, shift your identity. Start thinking of yourself as the type of person who naturally does this habit. Use language that reflects your new identity. Act in ways that align with who you're becoming. Not just what you're trying to do. The ripple effect. Here's what happens when you master just one habit using these principles. You don't just change that one area of your life. You prove to yourself that lasting change is possible. You build confidence in your ability to transform. You create momentum that naturally extends to other areas. The person who masters morning routines often finds it easier to organize their workday. The person who builds consistent exercise habits often finds it easier to eat well. The person who creates regular creative practices often finds it easier to maintain relationships. Habits aren't just about productivity or self-improvement. They're about becoming the person you're meant to be. They're about aligning your daily actions with your deepest values. They're about creating a life that feels authentic and satisfying rather than chaotic and reactive. A personal message. I want you to know something. I believe in your ability to change. I believe you have everything within you right now to create the life you want. You don't need to be someone different. You just need to understand yourself better and design systems that honor who you already are. The insights in Better Than Before have transformed millions of lives, not because they're magic, but because they're true. They work with human psychology rather than against it. They recognize that lasting change comes not from force, but from alignment. Your future self is counting on the decisions you make right now. The person you could become in 6 months, 1 year, 5 years. That person's entire life depends on whether you choose to apply these insights or let them fade into good intentions. You have the knowledge. You have the tools. You have the capability. The only question is, will you choose to use them? Before you leave, do 3 things. First, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Join our community of people who are serious about lasting change. Second, leave a comment sharing which tendency type you are and which habit you're going to work on first. Your commitment matters, and our community is here to support you. Third, share this video with someone you care about who's struggling with habits. The insights that have the power to transform your life can transform theirs too. Remember, you're not broken, you're not lacking willpower, and you're not destined to struggle with habits forever. You just needed the right understanding and the right strategies. Now you have both. Your transformation starts now, not tomorrow, not Monday, not when conditions are perfect. Right now, take the first step, trust the process, and prepare to discover what becomes possible when you finally understand how change really works. This is your time. This is your moment. This is your chance to become better than before. Thank you for joining me on this journey. I'll see you in the next video. We'll continue exploring the insights that create lasting transformation. Until then, keep growing, keep learning, and most importantly, keep becoming the person you're meant to be.